Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. The waves are so good, so I appreciate that we're in this building together. So the idea behind this panel is really, you two especially have, I feel like, been able to craft a life that literally, it says it in the title, building a life around the things that you love to do. And isn't that, I think, what everyone aspires to? Like this for me feels like this is what I love. Getting all these amazing people to come and talk and think about things from a little different perspective. And that is such a strong force within how you've crafted your careers and how you approach life. Maybe we'll just start out with Cyrus. So both of your parents are professors, right? So knowing that, and I'm from Virginia, so living off of having a career in surfing is pretty crazy from where I'm from. It's not, I don't know, it's not something that people are familiar with or take for granted. And knowing that you came from an academic background rather than, I don't know, something less traditional, I feel like that, maybe you can speak to that. Like, was that was the idea that you're going to build a life around surfing, documenting it, being extremely creative, pushing a lot of creative energy into the world, was that far-fetched? Like, did that feel like a big risk? Was that something you had to fight for and like communicate a vision for, or was that not? Was it very accepted?
It definitely wasn't accepted by my family in the beginning. They were very concerned about me, and rightfully so. I don't think surfing was something that I had a lot of foresight in making it a career. It was more a coping mechanism for me, that the ocean was the wilderness, and that was the closest thing I had to some sort of solace from things that had happened in my younger life. So I just became obsessed with being in the water and being in the outdoors. And I don't know if you guys feel like this, but it seems like the things in life that happen to us aren't really our doing. It just happens, And I think, for me, looking back on my life, it seems that way, where looking at where I am now, I don't even know if I was doing it. I dealt with certain things. I had certain, values that were instilled in me by my folks and my family, and I've kind of used that as a sniff test to different opportunities, or let those well up inside me to bust down doors when I felt like there weren't opportunities. And surfing just happened to be the medium in which I was able to do that, because it was my backyard. But yeah, I think surfing is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The people, the crew that was up here before us, it's those action sport athletes that are hucking themselves over ledges, watery ledges, or up and down cliffs, or off jumps. It's very different than what Kassia do, and it's just, I think, there I am. I think it's just a testament to where surfing's come, and the name of this is the Evolve, and I think all of these sports are kind of extensions of and expressions of the surplus and bounty of our culture, that people are supported to do fun things. So I'm just grateful. Yeah.
Awesome. Kassia, we just got back from an amazing trip in El Salvador and produced a short film that we're going to premiere, which I'm very excited about. But while we were down there, you were telling me as a kid you were a bit of a punk and a troublemaker. But like, thinking as a kid, like, did you have a vision for what maybe you would be when you grew up? And does it match to what's happening now?
I think in a lot of ways, being a punk and all that stuff came from just not really resonating with the structures that were laid out. Being it like, okay, you go to school, and then you have a family, and then you get a job, and then you have kids, that whole thing. I just felt like, hey, this is great, and it's just not for me. So I think it was just this energy and this excitement to just purely be alive that I had inside of me bottled up, and it felt like that was kind of a way to go that didn't really inspire me to be in any which way. So I think like me being a punk was just me like acting out because I didn't feel my intuition was like pushing me outside of that. So I think like to speak kind of a little bit to what Cyrus says, like things I feel like don't happen to us, they happen for us. And I think my push against more of a streamlined way of existing, or more of kind of like this structure that was laid out, it just made me push. And because it was uncomfortable, it pushed me into a new space. And listening, you know, to Paige and Gabby speak before, these women that, you know, are just, I respect so much for pushing themselves. It's like that level of uncomfort, what they were talking about. Like, it gives you a space to really see what you're made of and to push yourself beyond whatever limits there is. So I think being uncomfortable is really a beautiful thing, because there's a lot of truth that comes through that. And just like with surfing, for me, it was like, yeah, it's a place to go release. It's a place to go reset. And it's also a space like, in water, there's reflection. So there's like a real active meditative property for it for me. And it was able to really, through surfing, I could hear my thoughts. Through surfing, I could see things reflected back to me. And I think I really learned a lot about navigating the earth and the world and my life through surfing. I mean, I'm constantly still using metaphors that I relate to surfing as ways to navigate through whatever it is with business or just my own feelings that come up. And so I think that that was something that really felt right. When, you know, other things didn't feel right to me, I just put it all into the ocean. And I never thought I was going to be a pro surfer. I never really thought about anything. I was just trying to find something that made sense. And surfing really made sense to me. And I think it was a lot of the things. Obviously, riding waves is super fun. And the motion of the ocean, like everything about that is really fun. Though I think it was like the deeper layers of space to really reflect and to hear yourself and to be with nature and to be with the earth. That was what really drew me to it, and also felt really intuitively right.
Awesome. I feel like both of you have such powerful creative forces. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Maybe, Cyrus, we can start, like, whether it's Corduroy, Manda, all the amazing films that you're making. Like, it feels to me that you have a deep desire within to create something that did not exist before. And that maybe you can speak to that feeling, whether that's like a satisfaction, what is it that really motivates you to make something that did not exist?
Yeah, I think I love what Cass said about just finding purpose through the ocean in a world that doesn't necessarily make sense, and finding that inspiration that other people, that feels it's unique to yourself. It's something that feels very personal. And I think when looking back, I had a lot of trouble relating to society as well, and through these experiences in nature, felt like I was getting a direct dialogue that was different than what was being talked about in the culture. And not better or worse, it was just different, and I wanted to express it. And so I think that's kind of what has happened in my life, in the sense that I've wanted to birth something that I felt like I was being shown through my dreams or through whatever it was. And I don't necessarily feel now that I'm as interested in creating stuff that hasn't been done before. I feel like at 35, I'm being called more into service of like what is and the community around me. And so I'm currently asking myself the question of, is it better to do something new and unique, or is it better to just simply steward other people who are trying to do that themselves? So I think, looking back, that's maybe what got me up on this stage, was that discourse, but now it's changing.
Kassia, maybe you could speak to that drive, the force to create, because I feel like that's strong in you. I mean, with Kassia Surf, with the designing, photography, it feels like a powerful force. Where does that come from for you?
I think for me, the creative force always comes from the ocean and having chance to sit with myself. And so it always goes back to the water. If I'm feeling stuck with anything, it always goes back to the water, whether it's in myself or like my own mind and trying to create something. But I always just want to push everything. You know, that uncomfort that I was talking about as a kid, and me not feeling like something was right for me made me push to do other things and to live my life the way I wanted to. And I really think that that's, that's a beautiful thing. And that's what kept me pushing the limits more and more with what I'm creating. Because if I'm doing something that everybody else is doing, it's not inspiring anybody I'm not inspired to keep on doing it. And it's just about like thinking outside of what a box is. And, if you're trying to keep everything in this square place, like I like to color outside of the lines. And in that, there's like other things are born. And you don't really know where you're going to go. You're just like following your intuition and pushing it. And I think creatively, it's like everything's possible. And it's really nice to be in that space and to inspire other people to do the same. Like I hope with whatever I'm doing, it's inspiring people to empower themselves to say whatever they're feeling and be whatever you're feeling and create with whatever you're feeling and not be held back by, somebody being like, oh, that's never going to work. I remember as a kid, like even surfing, I was like, oh yeah, I'm surfing. Like I'm going to go do a contest in Costa Rica. And like even my friends were like, that's never going to work. Like blah, blah, blah. And like people love to say what's not going to work. And I think we're in a time where it's really awesome. And something like this is such a wonderful space to really empower and inspire other people to be pushing themselves past their limits, because that's where like magic happens, and that's where maybe the next discovery that's going to be the best, like, sustainable battery system is going to come from. Like everything's possible because we exist. And so I think in that's like that little bit, everything's possible.
Yeah. Well, I think that you kind of hit on an interesting idea. I think there's a lot of fear around forging on your own to go do something that everyone might reject and hate, and it didn't work, and then so don't do it. Maybe I think people go through that process of thinking, and I think that you had a lot of courage in leaving Roxy to go build Kassia Surf. That's not something you had to do by any means, but you did. So maybe you could speak to people who might be interested in, hey, like I want to go do this idea I feel very passionate about. I think I can do it. Like, what do you say to those people informed by maybe your experience of building your own business?
Yeah, if you think you can do it, you've already done it. And so do it, because nothing's a failure as long as you're getting it out into the world. And as I said before, things don't happen to us, they happen for us. Whatever you're putting out will reinform you to make another decision or to create something further down the line or inspire something else. So there's no failure, truly, as long as I believe personally, as long as your intention's pure and what you're creating is coming from your heart. And if you're putting it out into the world with those energies, then I think that there's no failures. It's just an opportunity to learn and grow and expand and push yourself even deeper.
Cyrus, what do you think about that idea of pushing past whatever fear, doubt, the things that make you not do the thing you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a self-preservation built into all of us, and traveling, both Kassia and I have been able to travel a lot, and I just think that other cultures I've seen, that they don't have that level of fear that America does, and there are some that do. But I think this is a culture that's uniquely interested in mitigating the unknown and risks. And it's been very good in building and creating security and growing the economy. And I think it's been a good check-in for me to realize that a lot of the world doesn't live that way, and we don't have to live that way. And our fear of death and our stigmatism of death and sort of pushing back impermanence sort of is something that I'm really interested in now, and it's given me even more, I think there was a voice deep inside of me, and I don't believe in time. I mean, scientists have proven that since Einstein, that time doesn't exist. It's a human construct. And like when you said, you know, if you think about you're going to do something, you've already done it. You put ripples out, I believe, into the future when you commit to something, and that feedback that you get is instantaneous. And I just think that, you know, when we push past our fear of failing and death or anything like that, we can really start to enjoy life. And at least if we fail on our own terms. And there's nothing, you know, the only regrets I've ever had in my life is when I've been too afraid to do something, and those have stuck with me. And there's been many times when I've pulled back and I've wanted to protect myself. And in retrospect, maybe I needed to. Maybe that's where I was at in my life. But the progression that I'm proud to have personally made is putting myself out there more in immediate relation with the moment, and totally letting go of even myself. Like, I'm gonna fail. Like, the illusion of me, you know. We're all the same, and so I think it's the idea of that we need to do, you know, what our minds or what our fear, the illusion that we need to succumb to our fears is an illusion of separation.
Awesome. I was hoping we were going to tread into some heady space here.
I was about to say,
we're deep in that territory.
Now
I like
that Cyrus just reminded us that time
super
doesn't
heady.
exist and our minds are all blown.
This is good.
I think this is actually exactly when we're supposed to move on and start getting some
for Q&As?
Some Q&A from the audience.
Any questions?
Anybody got any questions out here? I see no hands right now.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, there we go.
You both talked about
Go ahead and stand up.
mentoring and being stand up? Oh, yeah. You guys both talked about being mentors and like teachers or guides. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How it manifests actually in your lives?
Yeah, I just find myself all the time being asked, you know, because I've been able to carve a unique path that I think a lot of young people want to escape the cubicle, and they look and see that I've done that. I get the opportunity to, you know, whether it's a phone call or meeting with somebody, and I get to share what I've learned. And oftentimes I let them down because I don't have any specific tried and true isms, but one thing I do share is, like, define your purpose, you know, or define your values, sorry. And if you can write down, it can be 1 or 2 or 3 values, and if those become the linchpins for all the decisions that you make, then that's kind of the one piece of salient wisdom I felt like I've passed to people that they can take for themselves.
I think something like this is actually a way, by communicating with people in an open forum and actually having conversation, is a way that I like to continue sharing some of the things that I've learned, sharing some of my said failures and lessons, and to continue to inspire people to move on. So that's what I'm like thanking you so much, Zach, for putting this all together, because it gives us an opportunity to speak and to hear each other and to communicate. And I think that that's something that has been maybe a little bit lost. Like, I feel like in some ways, you know, being able to grow up at a time in a space that, you know, I was like 18 before I first had my cell phone. So it was really nice because I would talk to people, and, you know, we'd read books and we'd communicate, and you'd say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time and you were actually there. And that was pretty tight. And it's also, there's a level of accountability that I think that's really beautiful. And I think that that's something that is also nice to be held accountable, holding yourself accountable, and going back to, like, intentions and integrity and you know, your keystone things that you really feel are making sure you're checking those boxes before you're making a decision. And I think that really it's just about communicating in platforms like this and being able to, you know, take some of the things that I've learned, and when some of the young kids come up and want to talk to me about this, that, or the other, like, being able to really hold space and hear what they're saying, and to be able to speak to that, not as in, like, do this, you have to do that, but offer them suggestions, because everybody also has their own way to learn through. That said, by offering suggestions or what we've done, it maybe gives somebody another idea, like, okay, cool, you've done it that way, like, like what resonates, and also always asking the person, like, what resonates with them, like, what does that feel like, and just offering, a suggestion rather than, oh, do this way. Because going back to, whether it's business and people that have mentored me and stuff like that, everybody has a different way that they've done everything, and it's all worked. So in that, it's like, some mentors, like, through the time for me have been like, okay, this has happened. So really just like empowering people to find their own through line through it all. It's like we all surf different. I love how Cyrus surfs, and we're both goofy foots, and there's a lot of things about his surfing that I love and I want to do, and I still do it my own way. And he does it his own way. And that's where I think there's like something, like another analogy going back to surfing. It's like, there's all these things coming through, and we all have our own way to ride it, and we can still be inspired by other people and like gain wisdom or talk to them about fins, this, that, and the other, and you're still going to jive your own way. So really reminding people of that as well is something I feel important when I'm talking to some of the younger kids that are asking me what's up or why I did this, and always just believing in yourself. The minute somebody tells you not to do something, that's probably when you should do it.
All right,
see what it feels like.
We got Chad Nelson over here trying to squeeze in some early microphone time. Chad, stand up.
A quick question for you guys. You both obviously have kind of created these amazing careers and these lifestyles, and I think, if you just followed them on Instagram, you'd believe that it's just, sunshine and unicorns and perfect waves. But maybe you could talk to us a little bit about like the work ethic that you have to create the life that you have, because my guess is that you're both working pretty hard to make it happen.
Make it as deep and heady as possible so Zach's happy.
Yeah, that's an irony, and I think something that I'm very glad you asked, because I think a lot of young people, they want to live a life that is unconventional as an escape from hard work because it looks playful. And I always think to myself, if I were to have kids, which I hope to one day, that I would not necessarily glamorize living an alternative or radical lifestyle. I would try to instill in them a sense of getting your foundation, however that manifests, whether it's becoming a mechanic or whether it's becoming a professor or a doctor, and then really being able to enjoy the things that we all agree are amazing, and whether it's hacking, things in between to make that a healthy life. I think I've become very practical as I've gotten older, and I think I entered into this with a great deal of idealism and pain, and that's what pushed me to do a route that not a lot of people have, been successful at, because I did have my parents who were they're teachers, and they could help me through it, talking me through it, and I'm grateful to them and my family for that. And yeah, I just think that there's two sides to this, right? It's not just being expansive, it's also really learning how the system works and how the world works, and it's blending the practicality with the dreaminess and the imagination. For me, I'm incredibly disciplined. I mean, with my health, with my exercise that I do, with my work regime, with my personal relationships, how I approach business relationships. It's all incredibly, I don't know if I would say calculated, but I feel like I have a formula for it that I try to tweak all the time. And I'm happy to share that with people when they ask me, but it's like, I'm not just, and I don't think either of us, we can both get expansive and we can both talk, and Zach too. I mean, we can live our dream, but it takes a lot of management and systems and processes and protocols to make it happen.
All right, I think we're going to try and squeeze in one more before we wrap this one up. Go ahead, stand up.
Well, you want to hear Kassia on that real quick?
Oh, yeah. We could do that too.
Then we get Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just speak to it quickly. So thank you for the question, Chad. And I think that, everybody has their own work ethic. Some people work better with people. Some people work better on their own. And I think I was very fortunate, like Cyrus, to spend the majority of my life to this point being able to go ride a surfboard in really cool places. And then there was a space where I actually felt a level of guilt to that, because spending so much time in developing nations, seeing that, I get to go ride a surfboard and I'm staying in this nice place and I have access to clean food and water and luxury. I ended up getting into a space where I went through a lot of like guilt and kind of shame through that for a while. And through that learning process, that's when I left working for bigger companies and I went to go start my own thing, because I wanted to focus my intentions on working towards solutions and inspiring other people to do the same. And that's what drove me. And for 4 years, I barely even surfed. I was like answering emails, trying to set things up, doing this, that, and the other, learning, pushing myself, expanding my mind in different ways where I felt like I had done so much exertion on my physical body. It was time to like go into the mind and see how I could push myself in new ways and just focus on engaging people and living by example. So in that aspect, I went too far the other way because I'm an extreme person. And then I was just working all the time and I wasn't in my joy and I wasn't surfing, which is like my life force. And I wasn't really allowing myself that space. And so now I've come to a place of more balance. And in that balance, I can actually focus and get a lot more done a lot quicker with emails, this, that, and the other. And also I'm learning into it and, things that were like, this is the first time I've like tried to like fulfill an order or like whatever, so maybe it took me a little longer than most. Now I kind of like can understand that flow a little bit easier. And I'm finding more of the balance. And actually I'm able to get a lot more done more effectively and still have my joy, still have my inspiration, and still have my like embodiment about me where, but I almost had to push the boundaries in both directions to find that balance line. So when it comes to work ethic, if I need to get stuff done, I'll go surfing later still, but I will go surfing as opposed to not.
All right, that is going to wrap this one up. Everybody,
Okay.
thank Zach for leading a great conversation and Kassia and Cyrus for the inspiration.